Welcome to the Giving Tuesday Hour on the Carolina Catholic Media Network. This is your special weekly opportunity to prayerfully and financially support our mission to educate, inform, inspire, and enrich lives with the truth of Jesus Christ. Operators are standing by now and ready to receive your tax-deductible pledge. Call 1-800-857-2909. That's 1-800-857-2909. Or visit carolinacatholicmedia.org to donate online. Once again, welcome to this special Giving Tuesday hour of programming, and thank you in advance for your generosity. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this very special Giving Tuesday hour here on the Carolina Catholic Media Network. My name is Bill Snyder. Once again, I am honored and privileged to be joining you for this very special hour. We want you to call in and help support all of these local programs that we're featuring. It is 1-800-857-2909. 1-800-857-2909. We need your prayerful and financial support to continue being able to broadcast these wonderful local programs. And we're going to be featuring another local program this hour. It's called Faith in Sport. The host is Dr. John Acquaviva, and he is with us along with David Papandrea. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you, Bill. It's good to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be a great hour.
Great to be here.
It's going to be a wonderful hour, guys, to be talking about this. And so, Dr. John, I would love to just, give us for you to give us the lowdown on really how Faith in Sport came to be, and the beautiful program that it is, especially for guys.
Got it. Yeah, the idea came to me about 10 years ago to do a program on Catholic radio, but it initially started as Faith and Fitness because that's my background. I'm an exercise physiologist. I teach exercise science at Wingate University, not too far from Charlotte. And I got this offer from this local gal who's actually on Carolina Catholic radio. She does segments. Her name is Gal Behringer. And she made an offer to me because she was doing a show on Radio Maria, which is in like 6 different states. They have 11 different affiliates and so forth. And she said, how would you like to bring your show, Faith and Fitness, to Radio Maria? And I said, well, it's not a theology-based program. And she goes, no, we want basic format. I think the producers and the station manager would like something from this aspect to speak to the everyday listener. So I said, okay, I'll put something together. And eventually I was hired by Radio Maria. But after about a year of doing this, I was doing a weekly show for an hour. Sometimes I had a guest, sometimes I didn't. I found it very difficult to develop good, interesting content consistently because the world of fitness is fairly stagnant. In other words, there's a lot of research that comes out in the area of fitness, and there's a lot of research and discussion on faith, but to combine those two made it difficult. In other words, it was a long hour. Sometimes it was difficult for me to develop really good, interesting content. So eventually I had the idea and I went forward and I spoke to the station manager at Radio Maria and I said, how would you like it if I changed the concept and the name from Faith and Fitness to Faith in Sport? And what I was going to do was shift from this developed this whole developed content of, God made our bodies. We are to respect them. And one of the ways that we can show respect for them is by taking care of them through good nutrition and proper exercise and so forth and regular exercise, to switching it to this more dynamic field of sport and talking about the character, the morality, and the ethics that can be developed in sport and that need to be kind of utilized and called upon. And really, the adults that are in the world of sport need to kind of nurture this concept so we make youth sport in particular a better place. And I think Radio Maria kind of shrugged their shoulders and they went, is there a difference? But of course, there's a huge difference between faith and fitness and faith and sport, because the content was going to be all about sport at every level, from professionals to Olympics, all the way down to Little League sports. And just talking about things that are going on, the issues and the stories that are going on in the world of sport. And then eventually, as I was doing the Radio Maria show, somebody put me in touch with David Papandrea and said, there's this guy, Papandrea, he is wanting to bring Catholic radio to Charlotte. And I said, well, it's about time. And because I knew that they were one of the few big cities, if not the only big city, a relatively big city in the country, that didn't have Catholic radio. So if I remember that person's name, I will be a really happy guy at this point. But I cannot recall the gentleman that introduced David to me. And anyway, we started a conversation, and David from the start said, I want you to do this program. I want you to come aboard Carolina Catholic Radio and, continue to do this show. And this meeting was about 4 years ago. I've been on with Carolina Catholic Radio, or Carolina Catholic Media, now for, I think it's 2 years this summer. Does that sound right, David?
Oh, John, my gosh, you forgot about a year and a half.
Oh, okay.
You were on with us from the beginning. We debuted January 31, 2019.
Oh. Okay, that was going to be my next guess. It was 3.5 years.
There you go.
Yeah. So, and I had been doing it regularly. I took a little hiatus in the fall, but for the most part, I've been doing it every week or every other week, doing a show. And I have two people that sit in kind of like the guest host seat. They're just special guests for the day. One is Ed Billick. He's a local radio guy and professional, faithful guy. And another one is Carlos Herrera. He's up in DC area. He's a certified soccer coach. He's a former youth director, former PE teacher at a Catholic school. So he has this really good background and insight into the world of sport, both as a faithful Catholic and as a former athlete and a coach. So he has this great perspective. He's a longtime great friend of mine. We've literally been friends for over 30 years now. So he brings a different perspective. And every other show, basically, I have Ed on, and then the next week I have Carlos on, and they both bring a different dynamic, but a good dynamic to the show. They're good conversationalists. They're good people to bounce ideas and stories off. And the hour just goes quick. And then, of course, just about every show we have a special guest on the line. Sometimes they join us in studio, but for the most part, they are individuals who, in almost every case, are just like me, Carlos, and Ed, in that we're former athletes, we're faithful to the teachings of the church, and they're involved in sport themselves. And sometimes they're professional athletes, sometimes they are amateur athletes, sometimes they are coaches, but they bring their own perspective of sport, and they're trying to make the world of sport a little better through whatever they do.
It's so beautiful to hear this, and it's really one of those beautiful mandates that we can influence our culture through virtue in sports, so we're going to have to just take a short clip of this and show it to you, right? Like, that's what this is all about, this hour. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go to a clip of Faith in Sport so that you can hear what this is about. You can hear what John's talking about just right now. And after that, we'll come back and we'll continue talking about, that and how it's all put together. But in order to keep innovative shows like this on Carolina Catholic Media, the only way we can do it is with your financial support. So if you can please give us a call right now, 1-800-857-2909. Again, that's 1-800-857-2909, or you can donate online at carolinacatholicmedia.org. Do that and, pray about that and your best gift as you listen to this first clip here of Faith in Sport with Dr. John Acquaviva.
Buddy, how you doing this week?
Doing great.
Are you?
Back on air with you.
Oh, yeah. No, this is great. I always look forward to Mondays. Either you're here, Ed's here, and on some days they're both here, aren't they,
That's
Chris?
right.
I remember there's been a few times the guests had to cancel or they had to switch the date, and Ed comes on for the second half of the show, or Carlos has done it. Buddy, I appreciate everything you do, all the preparation you do for this show. Let's get started in our conversation because you and I had a really, I would say, not heated, but what's the term? A motivated
Difference of opinion.
Well, we had a difference of opinion for sure, but there was energy behind our conversation about some things going on in the world of sport. I can't wait to get into it. Let's get into it right now, buddy.
Like you call it a heated debate.
No, yeah, it was a really good debate. I loved it. And Carlos and I don't always agree on these things in sport. We agree on so many things, Lolitos and I. But on this particular issue about the horse racing, we differ a little bit, but still, it's going to be a good conversation. Buddy, one of the things that you and I do every time we get together, we do our hit and miss, and that is something good or bad, positive or negative in the world of sport. It doesn't have to necessarily do with our faith. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But you're up first as always. What's your hit or miss for the week here on Faith in Sport this week?
Well, I'm going to bring in my son. I have a boy, and he's turning 5 this week, and
Wow.
I had gotten him a children's Catholic Bible.
Love it.
And it's the same one that I got when I was a kid. And so we've been reading it at night, and the story of David and Goliath is one that I just read to him. And unfortunately, this Bible isn't written for kids. It has pictures in it and illustrations, but it literally talks about killing and because we're talking about the Old Testament, right, with a lot of the fun stories are there. So David and Goliath, great story, but it reminded me of this particular hit for this week, and that is, if those of you, this past Saturday was the running of the Preakness, which is the second leg of the Triple Crown.
Yep.
And as everybody knows, having a Triple Crown winner is almost a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see a horse to win all three.
That's right.
And in this particular case, I think many people have heard it, but in the Kentucky Derby, which is the first running of the Triple Crown, there was a horse who wasn't even in the race, who got substituted at the very last moment because there was a scratch from one of the horses that were in there. I think it was 20-some-odd horses. One of them scratched, and this was a call-up. And literally, the horse's name is Rich Strike, and this horse had odds of 80 to 1
That's right.
to win.
That's right.
His win-loss ratio was 1 to 7. Right, he had only won once in 7 races. The owner had bought him for $30,000, just not because he wanted to buy a Derby-winning horse, but he just thought the horse was good, and he thought in horse racing you buy horses just to train them and to run them and to see how they fare, but rarely do you feel like you're buying a Derby-winning horse. Anyway, this 80 to 1 odd horse ends up running from the back of the pack, looking like an 80 to 1 horse, so much so that the announcers don't even pay attention to him until about 100 feet from the end of the winner's, like the tape, right, where the camera is. This horse passes everybody, including the favorite, who was at the time, the favorite is Epicenter.
Yep.
And the announcer doesn't even mention until he says, "Rip Strike coming on the outside. Oh my gosh, he wins the Kentucky Derby. 80 to 1, the longest odds I've ever seen." And he's going crazy, but he didn't even mention the name until he passes.
That's right. He probably didn't know what the name of the horse was.
Unbelievable.
It was
80 to
great.
1 odds.
It was great, brother. There's no doubt.
And it makes you think of David and Goliath, and there's so much we could talk about in horse racing related to this.
Yeah.
Because he didn't run in the Preakness. They actually kept the horse out to, quote-unquote, save the horse for the Belmont, which is a longer race. But anyway, there's a lot there that we could talk about, but I just thought it was fun. Some of my nephews whose family is in horse racing, like they bet.
Yeah.
So the whole family, there's 6 kids, very Catholic family. They all put very Catholic betting family, just like yours, John, right? and they some of them bet the 80 to 1 horse with, I think it was $5, and they would have come out winning something like I don't know, $450.
Oh yeah, they would have won a lot of money. You know what that's like, man. You had at a derby party you and I both attended over a decade ago. I think we talked about this on the air when you weren't here. Ed and I did, with Giacomo, and he was 50 to 1. Is that
60? It was like 68 to 1 or 58 to 1.
And it was great because our mutual friend Charlie, who's been a guest on this show, he's in the seminary and he's been a guest.
He's very Catholic as
well.
yeah,
of course he's in the seminary.
Catholic betting family.
Yeah, exactly. They're they might have put a wager or two on a horse race or two in the past, but they didn't go through a bookie. They just accepted the money and they just distributed the odds and so forth. And I thought
they were not happy with me because they more than what they expected.
But if I remember correctly, you only put $5 on it. Is that right?
I think I probably put $5 on. I put it on probably 2 or 3 horses.
Yeah, and one of them was Giacomo. And one of the reasons I like Giacomo is that is a fairly common first name of a male Italian. Right? Yeah, it's Italiano nome. All right, folks, you're listening to Faith in Sport here on Carolina Catholic Radio. This is a co-production of Radio Maria. This is Faith in Sport, where we look at sport through a Catholic lens. Carlos Herrera is joins us just about every other show. And right now we're talking about our hit and miss in the world of sport. And his hit is Rich Strike, a horse, an 80 to 1 horse who won a couple weeks ago in the Kentucky Derby. Now, the irony was this past weekend was the Preakness, the second leg of the Triple Crown. He had a chance to not only win that race, but to win 2/3 of the Triple Crown, but he was pulled. But I'm going to leave our listeners suspended on that one, Carlos. We're going to come back to that after the break here in a little bit.
Hey everybody, welcome back. You are listening to a very special clip there of Faith in Sport, and you're with us here for our pledge drive. This is the Giving Tuesday pledge drive here on the Carolina Catholic Media Network. We need your financial support to keep wonderful programs like Faith in Sport on the air. We can't do it without your prayerful and financial support. The best way to give to us is right now over the phone. There are operators standing by to take your call, 1-800-857-2909, 1-800-857-2909. But we don't want you to text and drive. We don't want you to, crash and all that stuff. So please don't dial your phone. You can donate online later at carolinacatholicmedia.org if you're driving. So we do appreciate you prayerfully considering how you can support us, but I want to dive back in to our discussion with Dr. John Acquaviva because he is really doing a great job just laying out how the program began and the different parts of his program. So I'd love to kind of zero in on the segments because this show moves. It has energy to it, as you just heard. So talk to us about the design of the show.
Sure. Like anything, we want to have a kind of a script of sort and something to follow that guides not only us, but it can bring in the listener as well. Or as you mentioned, it's on YouTube and people can watch it or hear it through a YouTube channel as well. So what we do is we have there's a consistency of material, or in particular what we call segments, right? And this is pretty typical in the world of sport. And for instance, if I'm on the phone with Carlos from Washington, D.C., or Ed Billix in studio with me, we always start the conversation after we just say, hey, how's it going? Happy Easter, or how's your Advent going? Whatever the case is. We often will start the first segment with what we call our hit or miss in the world of sport. And this always starts our conversation. This always starts the hour. And it's just a way to do two things. It's to address something that is positive or negative that has occurred recently in the world of sport, but also it kind of brings the listener up to speed of something they may not have heard of, something that's controversial that's going on in the world of sport, or something that they actually may never heard of that we can bring to their attention. So for instance, just a couple weeks ago, there was an NBA player from the Congo who announced that he would give his full $1.3 million salary from his NBA contract, the National Basketball Association. He's a professional player. And he had said he'd made a formal announcement that he was going to give it. And I think it was going to go to helping build a hospital and medical supplies and medicine for this area where he's from in the Congo. And I couldn't think of a better example of a what we call a hit in the world of sports. Somebody that did something positive, something that was good for our culture, good for society, good for their neighborhood, good for their team, whatever the case is. And that's a really good example of our hit or miss. In this case, it was a hit. So whoever the special guest is, Carlos or Ed, they bring their own story. Sometimes I know about that story. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's like under the radar. Sometimes it's like a big story of the week. And we just talk about it. And again, it's to kind of put the twist on, okay, we're not just talking about sport, but what we're really doing is we're talking about sport and virtue. And we want to talk about the character, the morality, the ethics that are involved in sport, and really put a smiley face on it or an unhappy face on it and say, okay, folks, this is really good behavior, or this is not good behavior, and let's talk about why. The interesting thing about the hit or miss and a lot of the topics we talk about, Bill, is most of it is fairly obvious. In other words, like a couple of weeks ago, there was an umpire in a girls' softball game. This was a really sad testimony of the passion that people have for their daughters and their sons in Little League. But it was one of the many true but unfortunate stories that happened in the world of sport. And this woman, middle-aged woman, was, earning $40 to probably $60 for umpiring a Little League softball game. These girls are literally like 10 years old, I think. And she had done, in the eyes of this one parent, a particularly bad job of umpiring. And after the game, she confronted her in the parking lot and ended up assaulting her. And there was a picture online of this woman with a black eye. And it was all because she just disagreed with the calls she had made. She hadn't done anything morally wrong. She hadn't done anything to insult this person individually. She didn't embarrass this person. But this woman was just so frustrated with the bad umpiring, at least in her view, that this umpire did. She met her out in the parking lot and assaulted her, including giving her a black eye. And it wasn't a modest black eye. This was a beating that this woman took. Thankfully, this woman was arrested and so forth. But when we bring stuff like this up, we don't have to bring it up to put a spotlight on why that's wrong. Everybody is in agreement on why it's wrong. But it gives Ed and I, or Carlos and I, or whoever my guest is, in the second half of the show, an opportunity to talk about that we're responsible for our behavior, and what we do is give them guidance on how to act and even prepare themselves beforehand. Like, for instance, Ed and I will often talk about, if you find yourself emotionally out of control at your kids' games, there might be a couple things that you need to do. And one of them is, for instance, and we don't have to go into a great deal of detail here, but one of them is you could stand further away from the field, because then if you're physically removed, then you're kind of somewhat emotionally removed. So that might be a good thing. The other thing that you might want to do is pray. If this is getting the better of you and you are being a negative influence on that sport, and you find yourself wanting to get aggressive, we believe in God or we don't. We believe in God's graces or we don't. And through this, discipline of prayer, those graces that we get through prayer, saying the rosary, going to daily mass, going to Sunday mass, whatever it is that brings you God's peace and allows the Holy Spirit to enter you and then be fully within you, that is going to come out in sport. And that's the whole thing about these situations when people are negative and they do bad things to innocent people. Basically, they berate another parent, they berate the opposite coach, they get on the umpire, whatever the case is. All of that is bad. We know that it's bad. But what we talk about is, okay, what can we do in preparation for that game or during that game to minimize the intensity that may occur? So that's one of the things, Bill, is we always do a hit or miss. And then we talk about, usually for the remainder of that first segment, the first half hour, we talk about what's going on in the world of sport. And again, we try to make it so there is some positive or negative aspect to it, So it allows us to have this conversation and, again, bring in ethics and character and morality and so forth. Sometimes we read directly from Scripture. Sometimes we read directly from the Catechism. That kind of helps direct and explain why these situations are good or they're bad, whatever the case is. And then about halfway through the show, we'll do weekend headlines. So some recent stories in the world of sport, but that just have to do with the X's and the O's. In other words, who's winning, who's losing, what are the big headlines and so forth. And that's literally just a minute or two, what you would hear on normal sports radio or on a news program where they do headlines once every hour. What's going on in the world of sport? Who just won the PGA? Is the Preakness coming up? What's going on in the NBA playoffs, Major League Baseball, whatever the case is. And then usually for the second half of the show is dominated with a call-in guest. And this is one of the challenges for me each and every week, each and every month, is to get good and interesting guests, people that have written books, people that have their own radio program, people that played at a high level in the world of sport. And we have been on the air now. We've done literally hundreds of shows, and we've literally had hundreds of guests. Some of them are repeats, but most of them have been on one time. And some of them, in fact, most of them have been absolutely terrific. And almost in every case, they're faithful Catholics. There's been a few people who profess their Christian faith, but aren't necessarily Catholic. But the fact is they speak the same language as we do. They want to bring Christ into their heart. So they are bringing Christ onto the field, onto the court. So they make the sport experience better for all. A couple examples. Frank Reich, he is the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. And at the time, he was the offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. He came on the program. He talked about what his faith means to him. He talked about some players that have faith and that he connected with because they were so faithful. He's just a good man. He's a good, faithful man. And he's just an interesting guy. He was an NFL quarterback for over 15 years, and now he's in the NFL as a head coach. He was a great guest. Another example is Chase Hildenbrink, and he's a priest in the state of Illinois. And I can come back and talk about Father Chase because I know we have to go to break right now. So I'll leave you guys on a cliffhanger there.
Yeah, that's always good. It's so interesting. It's so awesome that you have this incredible format. And folks, in order to hear it, in order to keep it on the air here on Carolina Catholic Media, we need your support. So please give us a call, 1-800-857-2909, 1-800-857-2909. There are operators standing by right this very minute to take your call. You can also donate online if you'd like to do so when you get home or whatever. You can do that online at carolinacatholicmedia.org. We're going to go to another clip of Faith and Sport right now, and when we come back, we will continue our conversation with Dr. John Acquaviva and David Papandreou right back after this clip.
Bishop Paprocki, you're still playing in a men's hockey league, aren't you? Every Thursday night still?
Well, we haven't been playing the last 6 months.
Got
I've been
it.
on the ice exactly once since a COVID shutdown. But, normally I'm still playing, and I also do a lot of running. Running is my other sport, and I've been, in the absence of hockey, I've been running almost every day now.
Awesome. And I read about your distance running. Have you competed in any marathons, Bishop?
Have I competed in any marathons? Yes, I've finished 24 marathons, actually.
Holy cow.
And, I've done 24 marathons. I started out running in Chicago, and I've done Boston Marathon once, and a few international marathons. I've ran in Rome and in Athens and in Dublin, Ireland. So yeah, I've been doing quite a bit of running.
Outstanding. Now, okay, it's a big game. Let's say in your league of hockey, tomorrow night's the game. Maybe a championship type game, or at least maybe vying for first place, whatever the case is. What gives you more energy, the night before a big hockey game or the night before a marathon?
Oh, probably the night before a marathon.
Really?
Before a hockey game, it's the kind of thing that I don't know. I find for goalie especially, a lot of it is just instinct. I find sometimes I actually make my best saves when I'm not thinking too much. You just kind of react and let your instincts take over, and let your reactions make the saves. But with running, it's a whole different thing. When you're going to be out there running, my fastest marathon was 3 hours and 25 minutes, and my slowest was 4:59. So when you're going to be out there, 3.5 to almost 5 hours, that's pretty grueling in terms of your endurance and your determination. So you really got to get psyched up for that. Hockey for me is more fun.
Yeah,
I enjoy hockey. I do that for fun. There is a runner's high that's attached to running, but it usually comes when I finish running, not when I'm actually running.
That is, I'm an exercise physiologist, and one of the misnomers about long distance running is that everybody gets the runner's high, and it's been found that only between 10 and 20% of all participants actually experience that. Most people just experience fatigue and pain, but what a gift to be able to have that actual high. And I know what you mean. I've played rugby for a long time. I run myself virtually every day, and there is a nice feeling of accomplishment. In fact, especially if I run first thing in the morning, few things energize me and give me a better feeling of accomplishment than doing that. I can't imagine running 26.2 miles. You are elevated the same way that host is elevated every single week, aren't you?
Well, yes, and there is something that's very psychological about that in terms of running. I also like to run first thing in the morning. It wakes me up. It gets me going. Just to have that kind of the blood and the oxygen circulating through your brain. And for me, the runner's high. It's not just being relieved that I'm done with the run. I really do think it's these natural painkillers that you have, endorphins, or
that's right.
different natural ways that your body is basically dealing with the pain. And I think what my experience is when I'm done running, I think I've still got these endorphins kind of flying through my brain, and I feel so good. I feel refreshed and just a lot more enthusiasm when I'm doing that.
Awesome. Folks, I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. You're listening to Faith and Sport here on Carolina Catholic Radio and the Radio Maria USA network, and we welcome all those affiliates joining us today. We're talking with Bishop Thomas Paparocki from the Diocese of Springfield, Illinois. Your Excellency, you, I think, took up something since we last talked to you a few years ago, and that is you are now coaching hockey. How's that experience been for you?
Oh, it's been wonderful. I help coach at Sacred Heart Griffin Catholic High School here in Springfield, and we actually have what we call a co-op team. So we have some players actually join us from some of the smaller high schools in the area that don't have their own teams. But
sure.
I've been helping out as a goalie. I work primarily with the goalies, but I'm not just the goalie coach. I also help with the other players as well. And they all know I'm a bishop, and it's just been a great way, actually, I think, to make connections here. When people see the bishop in church, in the sanctuary, that's very important in terms of what I do sacramentally. But it also is something that does not allow people to really get to know me, or for me to get to know them. Whereas to do something like this, an entree into people's lives, like I've gotten to know players and their parents, and they, sometimes they'll come and they'll talk to me in the locker room or after the game, or I've got players that are going on to colleges and they want me to write a letter of recommendation for them. And,
sure.
And we do things also, and it's not just coaching on the ice, but also we do masses for our players, and awesome. We have. I gave them all a rosary last year for Christmas, and one of the players, in fact, came up to me. One of the non-Catholic players came up to me and after a game in the locker room once, and he said, "Thank you for that rosary. I don't know how to say it. Can you show me how to say the rosary?"
Awesome.
And that actually led to having a team rosary. I said, well, the best way to learn how to say the rosary is to do it. So, we set up an occasion like that, and we did the rosary. You can also combine these things. It's kind of it's fun sometimes. One of the reasons I got into coaching is because when I first started, they only had one goalie on the team, and I was asked if I would suit up and get on the ice so they have another goalie to shoot at, and so that was kind of how it all started. But then a couple of years ago, we actually had 2 goalies on the team, and so I didn't need to suit up at practice. I would just put my skates on, and I'd skate. And then after I did that for a few times, I just told the players, you know what, I'm going to be in the penalty box. And if anybody wants to go to confession, you can just come over to what they call the sin bin, and you can go to confession. Well, a number of players took me up on that. I don't know if they just wanted to get out of practice for a few minutes, but they came over and we did confession right there in the penalty box. So it's a great way of combining sports and faith.
Oh, absolutely.
Hey everybody, welcome back here to this very special Giving Tuesday Pledge Hour here on the Carolina Catholic Media Network. Thank you so much for tuning in and supporting Catholic radio, right? You just listened to a clip of the show, and again, if you like this stuff, if you are connecting with this stuff, then we need your support. It can't stay on the air unless we have prayerful and financial donations. So, if you can, please give us a call right now, 1-800-857-2909, 1-800-857-2909. You can also donate online at carolinacatholicmedia.org, and you can donate on the mobile app. We want you to go to the mobile app store of either your Google or Apple Play stores and get the mobile app. All you have to do is search for Carolina Catholic Media Network, and we have our own mobile app. It has all the content. It has all the shows in it and everything, but it also has a very important donate button. So if you have the app or you want to donate via app, you can do so. But I want to continue our conversation with Dr. John Acquaviva, and I think we just played a section of the interview that you were talking about with Father Chase Hilgenbrink. So if you want to give us a little bit more of a tease on how that came to be, or flesh it out a little bit, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So he is a gentleman. He's a priest in the state of Illinois. I want to say he's been ordained for about 5 years now, but he was a special guest for this reason. He is one of the many priests out there who have college careers, and in some cases, they have professional careers in their sport. And Father Chase was a former MLS player. That is the highest level of professional soccer in the United States. And he played internationally a little bit, and then finally he got called up to play for the New England team, if I'm not mistaken. And he was on that roster, and he met his dream, right? His dream as a kid was to become a professional athlete, like so many young athletes. And it was during that time in MLS in which his vocation was confirmed, and he left literally as he was a young man. He maybe was mid-20s, maybe late 20s, when he received this full calling to become a priest. He left MLS, he left professional soccer, and then now he is a priest in the state of Illinois. And I don't remember exactly how I got put in touch with him, but this is one of the great examples of why having a PhD is such a good thing. Often when I ask people to come on the show, I don't just say sincerely John Acquaviva. I will say Dr. John Acquaviva, professor of exercise science at Wingate University, because it just lends some credibility. Mm-hmm. I always give either my website, in which I do Catholic speaking, or I will give the website for Carolina Catholic Radio. So it gives it all some validity. And I remember when I was talking to him in preparation for the show, I said, Father Chase, and keep in mind that he was a really big story, even in secular media, because not only was he young and a professional athlete, but he looks like a male model. He's just this really attractive guy, really professional guy, really articulate in his vocation, as well as the gift of sport. And so I thought, this guy's fantastic. So I asked him, I said, Father Chase, just out of curiosity, I get asked to speak sometimes to men's conferences, women's conferences, retreats, whatever the case is. But I said, how many requests do you get to appear on radio, to do a presentation, to appear at a parish function of some sort? And he said, I get about 30 requests a month. So he gets literally one per day, which is amazing. And I said, I'm all the more grateful that you said yes to this. And he said, well, we have a mutual friend, one, but also this could really reach a wide audience, because at the time I was on Radio Maria. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this show, they are on 11 different affiliates throughout the Northwest, or throughout the Northeast, I should say, the Midwest and down south and so forth. So it's to a large extent, Bill, it's guests like Chase Hildenbrink, former professional football player Matt Burke. I mentioned Frank Reich, who's now the coach of the Indianapolis Colts, Moose Muhammad, who used to play wide receiver for the Carolina Panthers. They all are doing something to live out their faith. Like with Moose Muhammad, he's developed an organization that tries to bring in money to help people adopt children. Mm-hmm. Matt Burke is trying to start a Catholic school. In fact, it has since started a Catholic school in his home state of Minnesota. So they're all doing something, using their name, right? Using their fame, and perhaps even using their own monies that they made in their professional careers to do something good for their communities, to do something good for society. And that's the type of story we want to talk about on Faith and Sport.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful program. It's a unique program, and it's beautiful that you are putting this out there for people to consume, because you know what? I think this connects with a lot of people. There are, as you mentioned, all different types of levels of sport, right? We talked about Little League. We've talked about professionals. We've talked about college. We've talked about all the different levels of sport, that this program can, reach into the hearts of Catholics, of faithful people, and say, hey, you know what? There are great, holy people at all stages of sport. And it's possible to live a life of virtue. It's possible to live a life of virtue. And this program gives witness to that. So it's a beautiful and it's a unique program. And so, folks, we need your help to keep it on the air. It's just that simple. We need your help to keep it on the air. We can't do it without your financial support. Right now, I'm going to ask you for your best gift as we go to the next clip of Faith and Sport here. As we play the next and last clip of Faith and Sport here, I'm really going to ask you to pray to the Holy Spirit. Ask the Holy Spirit to come into your heart and put on your mind what your best gift is. It could be $5 a month. It could be $500 a month. But what is your best gift that you can give to keep programs like the Carolina Catholic Media Network and all of its local programming, Faith and Sport, on the air? What is that? Pray about it as we go to this next clip, and we'll come back and we'll continue our conversation and wrap up our conversation with Dr. John Acquaviva. That phone number, once again, is 1-800-857-2909, 1-800-857-2909. You can donate online at carolinacatholicmedia.org or in the mobile app. So make sure you download that mobile app to your phone on either the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. Okay, here's the final clip of the Faith and Sports Show for this hour. We'll be right back.
I think we'll grow pretty quick, but we don't measure success by how big we get. In fact, we want to stay somewhat small. I don't know. I mean,
like how small?
I'm thinking 300 students max. I think
Awesome.
After that,
Awesome.
there's a point where you sort of lose control of the culture, where you don't know every single family,
That's right.
Every single kid, and we don't want to get like that. I think that's part of the problem. That's where you start to lose kids,
That's
where
right.
they can start to hide and fall through the cracks. And so we'll see. We're ecstatic about what we're doing. I know a lot of people are excited, just trying to cultivate the whole person, if you wish, which all Catholic schools do to a certain extent, but
Right.
We're intentionally trying to cultivate things like virtuous leadership, ethical entrepreneurship. We're very heavy in the service, and trying to get our kids to develop a mindset that, it's not about them, that other people matter. And I think if you're striving for virtue and you're thinking about how you can serve your fellow man, those elements will lead you to a great life.
Absolutely. Folks, we're talking to Matt Burke, former NFL player, Super Bowl champ from the 2012 Baltimore Ravens. Also, you might recognize his name, played a few years with the Minnesota Vikings. You're listening to Faith in Sport. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. We just have Matt on the line for a couple more minutes. Now, Matt, we're going to do something different than we normally do. Normally, I just shoot another question at you or two, and then we discuss, what keeps you busy in life. But we have two questions in a segment that we call the Quick Q&A with Dr. A. But when I was writing this up, I said, you know what? I'm going to have the producer, Chris, shoot me the question, and I'm going to respond to it, and I would love to get your opinion because this is perfect. I think this is a hot-button issue, not only in sport, but in the world of football and in particularly the NFL. So, Chris, shoot the question at me. I'll answer it for a minute or so, and then I want to hear Mr. Burke's response to either what I say or just directly addressing the question. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, the question is, what should the NFL do to cut down on injuries, particularly concussions?
I say there's two rule changes, Matt, that should take place. Now, I'm like a lot of people. I played a lot of high school sports. I played college baseball. I had an opportunity to play a year professionally and so forth. But after baseball got over with, I switched to the world of rugby. And this sport was introduced to me, and I loved it for a lot of reasons. But one of the reasons I liked it was the essence was captured in the safety of making a tackle. And of course, we were taught to wrap at or below the hips. And we're asked that our head goes to the backside instead of the front side, so upcoming knee or thigh can't hit you in the head. And not only was that the way that we were taught to tackle in high school, but this was most important in the world of rugby because the play continues on. You probably know a little bit about the sport. It just continues on, right? It's called phases, and the whistle doesn't blow sometimes for 2-3 minutes at a time. And you can make, literally, personally, you can make as much as like 5 or 6 tackles in a 90-second time. It's pretty crazy. But the whole time, of course, you want to tackle safely so both you and the ball carrier continue with the next play. So in the sport of rugby, and I became a referee a couple years after I retired from the sport at age 40. So I've been a referee now for a long time. And Matt, it is in the rules that if you do not tackle wrapping up, it is considered unsafe play. You can either warn the player or you can directly give them a yellow or a red card, depending on how egregious that tackle is. That's one of the things that I would propose. If they truly, the NFL wants to cut down on injuries, there needs to be a change in how a tackle is defined. And I saw the game last night. Did you watch the Vikings-Cowboys game last night? And of course this happens all the time, but did you happen to see where a lineman literally jumped on the defensive back, put him in a headlock, and drove his head to the ground, and there was no penalty, and it wasn't even illegal? And,
well, I can't disagree with anything you're saying, but the last thing the NFL needs is more rules.
Okay.
I'll say this. One,
Go ahead.
I'd like to say I've actually studied rugby a lot in the tackling, and I used to work for the NFL league office. I coach a lot of youth football with my boys, and the difference between football and one of the difference between rugby and football is, in football every inch matters. Every single inch. I mean, literally come down to 1 inch. And in rugby, it's not so important that you stop the guy exactly where he is and drive him back. The most important is just get him down.
Understood.
Right? But NFL is different, and so I would say this: the NFL has made strides with keeping your head up, and really, everything filters down from the NFL. So 5-6 years ago, when they started outlawing forcible contact to the head and neck, and you got to keep your head up. I mean, we've seen that. We've seen a culture change.
Yep.
I think it will continue to get better. Is it ever going to be, 0 concussions or 0 danger? No, but that's part of the game too. I mean, the physicality, right?
Yep.
That's what makes football so great. So, I think good things are being done. I think, everyone's going to keep striving to get better. The other thing, too, is we always have to understand is everything, these decisions should all be made in data, right? I mean, based in data.
That's right, facts.
Youth football and football is not the number one concussion sport out there. It's actually number 4 behind soccer, boys and girls soccer, and ice hockey.
Interesting.
And which is fine. But, I mean, football does get a little bit of an unfair share of blame or the spotlight just because of the position that the NFL holds in our society and in our sports landscape. Mm-hmm. It's all good. It's all good. I think the conversation's been great. It's ultimately helped make the game safer at youth levels as well. Like I said, change the culture. I do think some of the rugby tactics and principles have been put in play. The Seattle Seahawks made that very famous. Actually, they used some rugby principles when teaching, and they were the best defense in the league for a while. So.
That's right.
It's good. It's never going to be zero. And when people ask me, and I don't, football's not for everybody to play. If you want to watch it, great. But when they talk about their kid playing football, shouldn't he play? I say, hey, whatever your kid's comfortable doing. The great thing about football is you don't have to start playing it when you're 4 years old in order to have a chance to play when you're in middle school or high school. A lot of people pick it up in middle school. I didn't start playing until the 10th grade.
Sure.
So when we see so many kids that aren't active or dropping out of sports because other sports require specialization and private trainers and that football's not like that. So football's got a lot of other good things going for it too.
Chris, I learned a lesson here. Not that Matt and I were having a debate on this, but if it were a debate, I learned a lesson: never debate with a guy who graduated from an Ivy League school. Okay.
Well, I barely graduated. Barely.
Barely graduating is like saying you barely made the Hall of Fame, brother. You went there and you graduated from there. I think that's awesome. Listen, what I think is more awesome, Matt, is you took time out of your busy schedule to join this show. This show is obviously important to me, and I love to talk about sport and faith, and whenever I can combine them, I think it's a bonus. But before you go, I want to give you two big thank yous. First of all, for starting that new high school in the St. Paul area in Minnesota. I think you guys have done great work there. I can just tell from your on hand and the other gentleman that's involved in this process that this school is going to be good, and it's going to bring a lot of great. There's going to be a lot of great scholars, but also a lot of community and service oriented students. So that's a big thank you I want to give you. Another one is just thank you in general for supporting and promoting the faith, especially the pro-life effort. So thank you for all that.
Yeah. Well, and same to you, and you and Chris and all your listeners, and we'll just you always need to use our talents for good, and do what we're called to do. Answer that call. We all have a call, so I appreciate it. Talking with you is inspiring and encouraging to me, and happy to do it. Happy to do it anytime because I love faith and I love sports as well, John.
I appreciate that. Matt, thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.
Be well. Thank you.
Okay. Well, there you have it, folks. Matt Burke. Boy, he epitomizes the guest we want to have on this show. Somebody who's a professional athlete, somebody that articulates his points well. I didn't agree with him on the football thing, but he's got a great point. The bottom line is this. What I wanted him to agree with me on was maybe considering removing some players from the field, but not replacing them. Mm-hmm. But I didn't have a chance to talk about that. But he does make a good point. It's not that we don't know the dangers when we go into that sport. It is inherently a violent sport. People do not like to hear or use that word, but it is true. And Matt very kind of calmly mentioned that. Like, this is just the kind of the process of the sport, and it's the nature of the sport for it to be dangerous, and sometimes people are going to get hurt. Right. Well, let's do this, Chris. We got about 20 minutes left in our show. Let's take a couple-minute break.
Okay.
And, folks, just stay tuned here. You're listening to Faith and Sport here on Carolina Catholic Radio. I'll turn it over to Chris, but we'll come back with more Faith and Sport right after this.
Welcome back here as we wrap up our Giving Tuesday Pledge Hour here on the Carolina Catholic Media Network. Today we have been featuring Faith and Sport with host Dr. John Acquaviva, and you've been listening to some different clips of the program and everything that you've been hearing. You can listen to it right here on the Carolina Catholic Media Network. It's available in our mobile app on demand and online as well. So please check it out. Please listen to us, but also please support us. 1-800-857-2909, 1-800-857-2909 is the number that you can call right now to make your financial pledge to help keep the Carolina Catholic Media Network on the air and these great programs like Faith and Sport on the air and continue to be produced. But Dr. John, as we wrap up, I would love for you to chat with us about, how do you find the different guests? I mean, you mentioned some great ones. So talk with us how you find your guests and how that comes to be each week.
In some cases, Bill, people, a friend or a colleague, maybe the co-host, the special guest that we have, Ed or Carlos, they'll mention somebody to me and say, have you heard about this guy? Have you ever thought about contacting them for your show? But the main way, and that does happen sometimes, But the main way is from me reading about sport. When I'm on the internet or I'm reading a newspaper, or I am simply on some type of social media, and I hear about somebody's faith that is in the world of sport, I dig deeper into and maybe even read a story or two about that individual. And then I just simply reach out to them. And I mean this literally, Bill. One of the gifts of this show is that virtually everybody I have asked to be on the show, whether they are, a former NFL player in the major leagues, whether they are a priest and busy in their diocese doing their own thing in their parish, whatever the case is, virtually everybody that I have asked has said yes to coming on this show. And I think in part, they're like, gosh, not only am I saying yes, if I say no, am I saying no to John Acquaviva and faith in sport, but they're saying no to God, right? I think that's one of the reasons why they're like, okay, I'll give you 10, 15 minutes. That's fine. But what I'd like to do is hear more from our listeners, from the folks that hear my voice right now, that are listening to this program. If there's somebody in your community, if there's somebody at the local high school or grade school, middle school, if there is somebody that that's involved in the world of sport, they're a faithful individual and they have done positive things within that sport in your community, I want to hear from or more about that individual. And then we will consider having them on for the show. They might be a perfect guest for Faith in Sport. And I'd love to hear more from the listener on somebody in their community, because the one thing you and I know, Bill, is that without volunteers, for instance, Little League sports would not exist. There are tens of thousands of people every year in soccer, baseball, football, basketball, wrestling, and so forth that donate their time. And it's purely on a volunteer basis. Almost every single one of them is not paid. And those people often are good people, and sometimes they're faithful people. And then when they bring their faith onto the field, and I don't mean in the form of saying a Hail Mary or an Our Father before they start the game. I'm just talking about they bring virtue to being an umpire. They bring virtue to being a coach. They bring virtue to being an administrator of sport. We want to hear more about those people, and it's quite possible we'd bring them on the show to hear their story.
Awesome stuff. And, lastly, if people who want to reach out to you, want to connect with you about the show, obviously, you ask people to let them know about, your listeners to let them know about, different people, but just to connect with you, how would that happen? What's the best way for listeners to reach out to you?
Yeah, they can contact me. One of the best ways is probably through either Twitter, j.aquaviva1, that's the number one. But the easiest way is email, and they can just contact me at faithandsport@wingate.edu. And Wingate's, of course, the name of the university in which I'm employed. And again, that's Faith and Sport, A-N-D, in there, faithandsport@wingate.edu. So if you want to make a comment about the show, you want to make a comment about this segment, you have an idea for a guest or just a topic that you'd like to hear me expand upon, those are the two ways to reach out, either through Twitter or email is probably the most basic for most people. Awesome stuff. Well, folks, we are going to ask you once again for your financial support to help keep this show and all the shows here at Carolina Catholic Media on the air. Can't do it without you, right? So, folks, as you reach out to Dr. John, please pray about what your best gift is. 1-800-857-2909, 1-800-857-2909 to make that gift. You can also do it online or in the mobile app, carolinacatholicmedia.org. Folks, we thank you for tuning into this very special Giving Tuesday hour, and look forward to being with you once again next week. Until then, may God bless you and your families. Thank you again for your generosity during this Giving Tuesday Pledge Drive hour on the Carolina Catholic Media Network. Once again, you can donate by calling 1-800-857-2909. That's 1-800-857-2909. Or online
at carolinacatholicmedia.org. Don't forget to follow, friend, and like us on social media. Just search for Carolina Catholic Media Network and personally invite at least one person to check out our program.
Catch the spirit, learn, love, and live your faith. Join Carolina Catholic Media during our 2022 Pledge Drive season, every Tuesday now through June 21, culminating with a 36-hour Sacred Heart Share-a-thon, which will be held Wednesday through Friday, June 22 through 24, the Feast of the Sacred Heart. Your pledge will help us better plan and allocate our resources as we evangelize the truth of Jesus Christ across our 7 media platforms right here in the Carolinas. 100% of every dollar raised goes back into the Carolina Catholic operating and capital expense budget to continue building our electronic media infrastructure and the support staff needed to keep our 7 media platforms functioning at peak efficiency. All of our local programs, now over 800 podcasts available on demand, are provided at no cost by our passionately devoted local program hosts. But there's so much more involved to distribute these on-air, online, and on-demand platforms. Carolina Catholic is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. Your financial gift is 100% tax deductible. We appreciate your prayerful consideration to support our important work as a media apostolate here in the Carolinas. When you consider the warlike state of our world today and the extraordinary times that we live in, with a cancel culture, unprecedented media bias, mistruths, and disinformation everywhere you turn, it's clear why we are here. We exist to communicate the truth of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, and the Catholic Church to over 5 million souls in the Charlotte Diocese, helping to bring 100 parishes together as one unified Carolina Catholic community, all for the greater glory of God. To be a part of our Sacred Heart Share-a-thon as a sponsor or as a donor, just email me or scan the QR code that's on your screen now.